The night sky above the Atlantic is silent, endless, and ancient. Far below, beneath the soft curvature of Earth, lies a land that has shaped the modern world in ways both celebrated and forgotten. As we drift closer, coastlines emerge like delicate threads stitched into a vast tapestry. They belong to Europe, a mosaic of cultures, kingdoms, revolutions, and ideas that have echoed across centuries. This journey begins not with a single nation, but with a feeling, a mysterious pull that has drawn millions across oceans, through war and peace, toward a continent at once familiar and endlessly surprising. Imagine standing upon a rugged cliff in Western Ireland, the wind salty and relentless, waves roaring against stone carved over millions of years. Long before borders, languages, or flags, this same ocean carried the seeds of humanity's curiosity. Europe did not begin as a map, but as a bridge between worlds. Archaeologists trace the arrival of early humans to this landmass more than 1 million years ago. Stone tools discovered in Spain, footprints preserved in mud in England, and cave paintings deep beneath the Pyrenees whisper the same message. Humans have always been drawn here. Why? The answer lies not only in geography but in opportunity. Europe's landscape offered rivers to navigate, fertile soil to cultivate, and mountains that sheltered yet challenged. As our journey sweeps inland, the darkness transitions to dawn over the Danube River. Its waters curl through 10 modern nations. Today it is a symbol of unity and culture, but thousands of years ago it carried farmers, traders, and warriors who spread technologies and beliefs. Genetics reveals that Europe became a melting pot even in prehistoric times. Early hunter-gatherers mixing with settlers from Anatolia, who brought the first seeds of agriculture, and later with horse-riding steppe nomads from the east. Every language, tradition, and story in Europe traces its roots to these cultural collisions. Picture a quiet valley in southern France some 30,000 years ago. A small community gathers at the mouth of a cave. Inside, flickering torchlight illuminates smooth walls that become canvases for animal figures: bison, lions, mammoths. These early Europeans expressed ideas long before written language. Scientists still debate the meaning of these mysterious images. Were they spiritual offerings, hunting instructions, ritualized memory? Perhaps they reveal something deeply human, the desire to preserve knowledge, to connect across generations, to become storytellers. Europe's first storytellers. Millennia pass like breaths in Earth's timeline. Ice retreats, forests spread. Tribes grow and learn to shape metal, first copper, then bronze, then iron. The mastery of metal changes everything. Tools improve, agriculture expands, and social hierarchies emerge. Power concentrates. Conflict becomes organized. Europe begins to transform into something recognizable, a stage for civilizations that will leave enduring marks, some brilliant, some devastating. Our path now bends south toward the Mediterranean, where the sea sparkles beneath the Greek sun. Here, city-states rise: Athens, Sparta, Corinth. They argue, trade, learn, and battle one another. But in open-air theaters and bustling agora marketplaces, one idea emerges that will eventually reshape global civilization: democracy. The belief that citizens, not kings or gods, can guide society. Imperfect, exclusive, and fragile, yet revolutionary. Philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, literature. European science takes root here. Names like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle echo through history, their ideas forming foundations still present in modern classrooms, courts, and governments. To the east, another power ascends: Rome. First a small kingdom, then a republic, and finally an empire whose influence stretched across 3 continents. Roads carved from stone connected vast lands, aqueducts delivered clean water to cities, law codes formalized rights and responsibilities, and Latin words shaped languages still spoken today. Yet Rome, for all its glory, was also marked by enslavement, conquest, and inequality. Empires rise as swiftly as they fall, often consumed by their own contradictions. As centuries unfold, Europe becomes a landscape of shifting borders and ideologies. Christianity spreads, unifying and dividing in equal measure. Viking ships slice through northern seas, reaching as far as North America. Castles rise on hillsides, symbols of power in a fragmented political world. Feudalism binds peasants to land, nobles to kings, kings to the divine. But beneath this rigid structure, something begins to stir, a spark of curiosity that refuses to be extinguished. In quiet monasteries, monks painstakingly copy manuscripts by candlelight, preserving ancient knowledge through the turbulence of war and plague. The Black Death sweeps across the continent, claiming millions. Yet in the aftermath, survival fuels innovation. People question authority, privilege, and ancient systems. Cities expand. Trade networks stretch across continents. With the Renaissance, Europe reawakens, rediscovering arts, sciences, and the human spirit. Michelangelo carves beauty from marble. Leonardo sketches machines centuries ahead of their time. Gutenberg prints books that spread ideas faster than any empire ever could. The stage is set for transformation unlike anything seen before. Europe becomes a laboratory of change, political revolutions, scientific discoveries, industrial innovation, shaping the world we know today. But progress is never simple. Exploration turns to colonization. Enlightenment ideals coexist with oppression. Europe's history becomes a study in duality, creativity alongside destruction, cooperation beside conflict. As we conclude this first part of our cinematic journey, the map of Europe shimmers not as fixed lines but as living history. A continent where stories overlap, identities intertwine, and time layers itself like sediment along ancient cliffs. The next chapter will carry us into the age of revolutions and nation-building, where Europe's ideas ignite movements that spread across oceans and shape modern humanity. The wind of history begins to shift as Europe enters the age of exploration and revolution. What started as scattered kingdoms and empires transforms into a continent restless with ambition, curiosity, and conflict. Ships depart from its coasts toward horizons once feared as edges of the world. Sailors, not unlike astronauts centuries later, commit their lives to the unknown. This era brings knowledge, exchange, and connection, but also exploitation, conquest, and the seeds of global inequality. Europe becomes both a cradle of innovation and a force that reshapes distant continents. Across port cities like Lisbon, Seville, Amsterdam, and London, the sound of ship bells echoes through busy harbors. Merchants and monarchs fund expeditions seeking wealth, spices, and land. The promise of abundance drives Europe outward. Christopher Columbus reaches the Americas. Ferdinand Magellan's expedition becomes the first to circumnavigate the globe. These voyages change history not simply through discovery, but through transformation of world systems. Economies, populations, cultures, and ecological balances shift dramatically. Yet behind every triumphal account lies a darker truth. Colonization displaces entire peoples, spreads disease, consumes natural resources, and introduces systems of enslavement. Europe, expanding its reach, also expands its moral contradictions. Back on the continent, new ideas ignite like wildfire. The Enlightenment emerges, challenging tradition and authority. Philosophers such as Voltaire, Rousseau, and Kant argue for rationality, individual rights, and social contracts that protect the governed rather than empower rulers. The notion that society can be reshaped through reason spreads to coffeehouses, town squares, and political assemblies. Soon, these principles manifest in revolution. In France, anger over inequality erupts into chaos and transformation. The fall of the Bastille becomes a symbol of people rising against tyranny. The Declaration of the Rights of Man introduces ideals that echo globally: liberty, equality, fraternity. Across the Atlantic, American revolutionaries draw inspiration from European Enlightenment. Europe influences the world, and the world begins to reshape Europe. But revolutions rarely move in straight lines. The French Revolution unleashes violence and uncertainty. Napoleon rises promising order, only to ignite wars across the continent. These conflicts expose Europe's fragility. Nations begin to form identities rooted not only in dynastic rule, but in shared language, culture, and memory. Nationalism spreads, sometimes unifying populations, sometimes dividing empires. The Industrial Revolution accelerates change further. Factories rise where farms once stood. Steam power, railways, and technologies transform labor, landscapes, and everyday life. People migrate to cities, creating new social classes and tensions. Europe becomes a powerhouse of science, engineering, and finance, its influence expanding globally. Yet beneath this progress, new pressures build. Competition between great powers intensifies. Alliances form. Weapons evolve. Nationalism becomes a catalyst for both unity and conflict. In 1914, a gunshot in Sarajevo ignites a war unlike any before. World War I introduces industrial mass warfare, trench stalemates, and incomprehensible human loss. Millions perish in muddy battlefields stretching from Belgium to the Balkans. The war ends, but trauma lingers. New borders are drawn, old empires collapse, and resentment simmers beneath the surface. Just 2 decades later, Europe descends into even darker tragedy. Economic depression, political extremism, and unresolved grievances give rise to totalitarian regimes. Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy spread authoritarian ideology, suppressing freedoms and targeting entire communities. The Holocaust becomes one of humanity's deepest wounds. 6 million Jewish lives extinguished alongside millions of others persecuted for identity, belief, and resistance. World War II engulfs the continent, cities reduced to ashes, families separated forever. Europe becomes a battleground not only of nations but of values, tyranny against freedom, hatred against humanity. When the war ends in 1945, Europe lies devastated. But from ruin emerges urgency, a desire to rebuild not only infrastructure but relationships. Former enemies become partners. Institutions form to prevent future conflict. The seeds of European integration are planted, eventually growing into the European Union. Yet unity coexists with tension, cooperation with sovereignty disputes, prosperity with inequality. As Europe rebuilds, a new divide emerges, the Cold War. Western Europe aligns with NATO and democratic governance, while Eastern Europe falls under Soviet influence. The Iron Curtain splits families, cultures, and economies. Berlin becomes the symbolic heart of this division, a city literally cut in half by a wall. Yet even in suppression, resistance grows underground. Music, literature, and whispers of freedom spread across borders despite censorship. When the Berlin Wall falls in 1989, crowds flood the streets, celebrating the moment many believed impossible. The Cold War begins to dissolve. Europe enters a new era of globalization, digital revolution, increased mobility, and cultural exchange. But challenges persist: migration crises, economic disparities, political polarization, climate change, and debates over identity and sovereignty. Europe stands at a crossroads, balancing tradition and modernity, diversity and unity. As Part 2 draws to a close, Europe reveals itself not as a monolith, but as an evolving narrative shaped by contradiction, innovation and destruction, enlightenment and oppression, conflict and cooperation. Its past is complex, layered, and unresolved, yet its future remains open, shaped by choices made today. The final chapter of this journey will explore Europe as a living organism, a continent interconnected economically, culturally, and ecologically, and ask what lessons its past offers for a shared global future. Today, as we look at Europe from above, the borders seem quiet, almost immobile, as if time has finally settled into place. But beneath the surface, history still breathes. Every street, every coastline, every hidden valley is layered with memories that continue to shape the continent's trajectory. Europe is not a finished story. It is a work in progress, sculpted by centuries of conflict and cooperation, by ideas carried across rivers and mountains, and by ordinary people whose lives, decisions, and dreams ripple outward through time. As the 21st century unfolds, Europe stands at a crossroads unlike any before. The European Union, formed as a safeguard against future wars, now connects over 24 nations through shared values, common laws, and economic integration. But unity is never guaranteed. Brexit exposes deep tensions between national sovereignty and collective identity. Populist movements question globalization, immigration, and multiculturalism. Economic crises strain alliances. The rising urgency of climate change forces governments to rethink industry, agriculture, and energy. Europe must confront challenges that transcend borders, problems that demand cooperation yet trigger division. Still, beneath the political headlines lies something harder to quantify: culture. Europe's diversity remains one of its greatest strengths. From the fjords of Norway to the vineyards of Italy, from Portugal's Atlantic cliffs to the steppes of Kazakhstan, the continent holds a kaleidoscope of languages, traditions, and ways of life. These differences can divide, but they can also unite through curiosity and mutual respect. Travelers crossing Europe encounter not uniformity, but contrast. City squares blending medieval architecture with modern skyscrapers. Traditional festivals celebrated alongside cutting-edge tech research centers. In cities like Paris, Berlin, Warsaw, and Barcelona, innovation thrives alongside heritage. Universities collaborate across borders. Scientists share data. Students study abroad under exchange programs that encourage intercultural understanding. Europe becomes a laboratory of ideas once again, not unlike the Enlightenment era, but updated for a digital world. New philosophies emerge around sustainability, global citizenship, and post-national identity. Some Europeans embrace these ideals, others resist, fearing loss of tradition or autonomy. The future raises profound questions. Can Europe balance nationalism and cooperation? Can it protect democracy while confronting polarization and disinformation? Can it welcome diversity without losing cohesion? Can it lead global efforts to combat climate change, or will economic pressure hinder progress? The answers remain uncertain, but Europe's history teaches that transformation often arises from crisis. When conflict pushes the continent to the brink, individuals and institutions step forward to rebuild. When divisions deepen, movements emerge seeking unity. Consider how landscapes reflect resilience. Forests once decimated by war now thrive through conservation efforts. Rivers once polluted now support wildlife again. Abandoned factories are transformed into cultural centers, parks, and innovation hubs. Europe repurposes its wounds into lessons. The continent evolves not by forgetting its past, but by confronting it. Museums, memorials, and education programs preserve stories of genocide, war, dictatorship, and resistance, not to reopen old scars, but to honor memory and prevent repetition. Yet Europe's identity is not defined solely by trauma. It is shaped by creativity, music, literature, cuisine, architecture, and scientific discovery. Beethoven's symphonies, Shakespeare's poetry, Da Vinci's sketches, and Marie Curie's research continue to resonate across centuries. They remind us that humanity's greatest achievements often arise from cultural exchange, curiosity, and collaboration. As globalization accelerates, Europe becomes increasingly interconnected not only within its borders but with the wider world. Migration reshapes demographics and labor markets. Digital communication dissolves distance. Crises, pandemics, economic downturns, geopolitical tensions reveal the fragility and necessity of cooperation. Europe learns that isolation, however tempting, cannot protect against global challenges. The story of Europe at its core is the story of connections between East and West, North and South, past and present. A continent defined not merely by landmasses but by relationships, ideas flowing along trade routes, cultures meeting across rivers, emotions expressed through art and shared memory. Europe's future, like its past, will be shaped by choices made in moments of uncertainty, by the willingness of nations and individuals to listen, to negotiate, to imagine something better. As our journey comes to an end, imagine once more that bird's-eye view of the continent at night. Lights trace highways, cities glow like clusters of stars, and the darkness between them hints at still untold stories. Europe is not a relic or a chapter concluded. It is a living narrative still unfolding, written by millions each day. If the tragedies of the past have shown the cost of division, then the achievements of the present remind us of the power in cooperation. Perhaps Europe's greatest lesson is this: when people come together, across borders, cultures, languages, and beliefs, they create something stronger than the sum of their parts. A symphony of histories, voices, and aspirations shaping a shared tomorrow. Thank you for traveling through time and space on this cinematic exploration of Europe. If you enjoyed this journey and want to experience more stories that uncover the hidden threads connecting our world, remember to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts or questions, and share this documentary with someone curious about our shared human past. Together, we'll continue exploring the vault of history, one story at a time.